The stars above Vega Colony were calm, quiet, and shining just like any other night. Families were enjoying their meals, children were playing in the artificial parks, and scientists were sending daily reports to Earth. Everything felt normal. But deep inside the system, something had already gone wrong. A small patrol ship that was supposed to return at midnight didn't report back. The signal officer, Lieutenant Shira, tried to contact them again and again, but there was only static. She frowned and tapped her console. Thinking it was just a technical glitch, she had no idea that she had just heard the last whisper of that crew. Commander Elric, the colony's leader, walked into the control center, tall and calm. "What's the matter, Shira?" he asked, seeing her stressed face. "The night patrol." "They didn't return," she said, her voice shaky. Elric didn't panic. Not yet. He gave the order to send another ship to check. 2 hours passed, and still nothing. Then, suddenly, the lights flickered, every screen in the command center. Blinked for a second, and then went black. Red alarms lit up across the station. Systems were crashing, one after the other. Shira screamed, "We're being jammed. Something is blocking all frequencies." Elric's face turned pale. This wasn't a simple power outage. This was an attack before he could issue orders. The station shook with a thunderous boom. The sky outside turned violet, twisted like a storm made of fire and shadows. Strange ships began to appear, shimmering, with no clear shape, like glass floating in oil. They didn't send warnings. They didn't talk. They just opened fire. Buildings exploded one by one. Civilians ran. In panic, screaming, looking for cover, the defense systems tried to respond. But they were being torn apart before they could even lock on targets. It was as if the enemy knew their codes, their layout, their weaknesses. Like they had been planning this for years. Elric ordered all survivors to gather at the central shelter, send a final message to Earth. He shouted. Shira was already trying, her fingers shaking as she typed the emergency code. They had only seconds. Behind her, the walls were cracking, and black smoke was flooding the room. She hit send just as the ceiling collapsed, light years away on Earth. The message arrived, broken and scrambled. They came from the dark, no mercy tell Earth. Then silence. Total silence. Commander Reg of the Deep Watch Network stood, staring at the screen. He replayed the message 5 times, each time hoping to hear more. But there was nothing. No signal from Vega Colony, no survivors, no data, just that one message. And then, nothing. Vega Colony wasn't just any outpost. It was one of humanity's most advanced settlements, a shining symbol of peace and progress. And now it was just gone. Reg couldn't believe it at first. He asked the tech team to scan again. To double-check, they did, but the results were clear. The entire colony had vanished like it had been wiped from existence. Meetings were held in secret rooms under Earth's surface. Top military leaders and scientists gathered, all looking at the same report. One colony. Gone in minutes. No warning, no declaration of war. The president of the Unified Terran Command stood before them, her voice calm but deadly. This was not a war, she said. This was slaughter. She looked at every face in the room, then added, "If we let this go unanswered, we invite the same fate." That night, Earth changed. Recruitment centers overflowed with volunteers. Factories turned on overnight, building ships, weapons, and armor. Billions of humans across planets, moons, and stations lit candles for Vega. And every one of them wanted one thing: vengeance. The fleet officers gathered around a massive digital table. Reg stood at the center, holding the printed copy of the last message from Vega. He placed it down and said, "We're going to find out who did this, and we're going to make them regret they ever looked at humanity." Across the stars, a storm was coming. But this time, it wasn't the enemy's, it was humanity's. They had poked the sleeping lion. Now they were going to feel its claws. And Earth would never be silent again, not until Vega was avenged. Not until the galaxy knew what happens when you make humans angry. And so, the preparations began. The largest fleet in human history was about to be born. But for now, the stars above Vega were quiet once more. Too quiet, and from that silence, war was coming. The galaxy was still talking about the fall of Vega Colony. People were angry, scared, and confused, but no one knew who had done it. There were no known enemies strong enough to destroy Vega that fast. Human leaders were shocked because Vega had the best defenses, and it still fell in less than 1 hour. Commander Reg couldn't sleep. He sat in a dark room, watching the last broken message over and over again. They came from the dark. No mercy. Tell Earth. That voice haunted him. He didn't recognize it, but he could feel the fear inside those words. And that fear had now spread across every human colony. The military sent scouting teams to the edge. A Vega system reordered a stealth recon team to enter the ruins and search for anything wreckage. Data, even bodies. They wore special suits that protected their minds from psychic attacks. Just in case, when they arrived, the place looked like a dead dream. Nothing was left, just floating metal, broken homes, and drifting silence. But then, one soldier found something. It looked like a strange, black sphere, part metal, part bone. As he touched it, it pulsed and made a sharp sound. The soldier froze, his eyes wide with horror. He screamed once and then collapsed. His brain fried like it had seen something no mind should see. They brought the artifact back to Earth inside a sealed chamber. Top scientists, including psychic specialists, tried to study it. One by one, they gave up. One of them, a doctor named Ilna, whispered, "This doesn't come from our galaxy." And then she quit the project and disappeared. Meanwhile, border colonies began to report strange things. Lights in the sky that vanished in seconds. Voices heard through machines that weren't turned on. Dreams shared by multiple people. All seeing the same thing, a planet burning, and shadow ships watching. People were getting scared. The news tried to calm everyone down, saying it was just stress or solar flares. But the military knew the truth. The enemy was still watching. Red was summoned to a secret meeting under the Martian surface. Their high-ranking leaders showed him old records, very old. They spoke of a species believed to have died thousands of years ago, a race called the Vorexul. They were said to be masters of darkness, fear, and mind control. No one had seen them for centuries, and most believed they were only legends. But now Vega's destruction matched the stories perfectly. Ships that shimmered like glass, weapons that burned souls, and voices that drove people mad. Rez stood up and said, "They're not extinct. They've just been hiding back in space." Another scout team made a breakthrough. They found a damaged enemy drone near the edge of the solar system. The drone was almost invisible, blending with space itself. They brought it back carefully, using robots to study it from a distance. Inside the drone, they found something chilling, a map. It showed multiple human colonies marked in red, but one location had a black circle around it. Earth. The drone had been spying on them for who knows how long. That was the moment the leaders stopped debating. There would be no peace, no waiting, no more silence. This was war, and humanity would not sit back this time. The president made a public announcement that echoed across every world. She stood tall in front of the Terran banner and said, "Vega was not just an attack, it was a warning. But we do not run, we do not bow, we rise. Humanity will answer with everything we have." The next day, the official order was signed. Build 700,000 warships. An armada like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Factories turned on at full speed. People from all colonies worked together, building, designing, volunteering. Veterans came out of retirement. Young cadets trained day and night, even criminals. were offered deals, serve in the fleet, and earn your freedom. Reg was placed in charge of a top-secret program, Project Hammerfall. His mission was simple but impossible: build a war machine strong enough to crush the Voraxul he picked. His own team scientists, engineers, tacticians, even alien allies. They built weapons that had never been tested before: gravity bombs, quantum lances, and psychic disruptors. The whole galaxy watched. Some alien races feared the humans would bring destruction. Others hoped they'd succeed, but everyone knew something massive was about to happen. And yet, even as the fleet grew, the Voraxul stayed silent. They didn't send a single message, didn't make another attack, like they were waiting, or watching, or laughing. One night, Rez stood on the balcony of the Mars Command Tower. He looked up at the stars and whispered, "You think you broke us at Vega, but you only woke the monster inside us." The silence that had once scared the galaxy was now being replaced with the sound of warships being born. Engines roaring, steel clashing, voices shouting commands. Humanity was preparing to fight, not just to survive, but to make sure no one ever dared hurt them again. The fall of Vega had started the fire. But now, that fire was spreading, and soon it would become a storm. A storm made of 700,000 warships, coming for revenge. Every planet, moon, and station in the human colonies had become a factory. Welding sparks flew day and night, engines roared in the skies, and massive steel parts were carried through the streets like parade floats. But this was no celebration. This was war prep. Commander Reg stood on a platform high above Titan's icy landscape. Below him, hundreds of newly built warships floated inside giant space docks. Each one was bigger than a city, loaded with weapons no one had ever tested in battle. And this was just one section. There were thousands more being built across the solar system. The humans were no longer waiting. They were creating the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. 700,000 warships. Every ship had a name, a crew, and a mission payback. Reg walked through a control room where young cadets trained in flight simulations. They looked nervous but focused. One girl stood out: Cadet Lonnie, just 19, yet already flying like a veteran. She had lost her mother on Vega Colony. Her eyes didn't blink as she dodged enemy ships in the training module. She didn't want medals. She wanted justice. Meanwhile, on the dark side of Mars, a secret testing facility was creating the deadliest weapons. Project Solaris, massive cannon that could turn part of a planet into glass. Quantum lances that could pierce shields from light years away. And something new. Something terrifying. Psychic disruptors. These weapons didn't just destroy ships. They broke minds. The idea came from what the Voraxul had done at Vega, driving people insane with invisible waves. Now, humans had their own version, and Rez made sure only the strongest minds were allowed near them. Back on Earth, people were changing. Music, art, and laughter had been replaced by steel, drills, and silence. Even children played with toy warships and shouted fake battle cries. The entire species was becoming one machine with one goal: never let another Vega happen. But the enemy was still out there, and they hadn't made a move. That silence scared Red more than any battle. Then, a message came from a small mining station near Neptune. A worker had reported seeing a shimmer in the sky. At first, no one believed it. But then, another report came in this time. A full security video. The footage showed a ship, half transparent, moving like a shadow underwater. It hovered near the station for 3 seconds, then vanished. No weapons fired. No sound, no warning. It was like it just came to look, and then left. Reg immediately sent a response team. They searched the area and found something: a small probe. Floating among the rocks, it didn't look like human tech. It was sleek, smooth, and cold, almost like it was alive. The team brought it back under heavy protection. This time, they were smarter, using layers of shielding to block any psychic attacks. Inside the probe, they found something shocking: a map. It showed dozens of human colonies circled in red. Each one had a number. Some were already crossed out. Vega was one of them. But there was one spot on the map circled in black earth. It wasn't just a target, it was the final target. Reg stared at the map and clenched his jaw. "They're not just testing us," he said. "They're planning to erase us." He called for an emergency meeting with the top admirals. In a cold chamber deep beneath the Martian surface, the new war council was formed. They called it Project Hammerfall. The goal: hit the enemy so hard they never get back up. Each member was chosen by Red himself, brilliant minds, sharp leaders, and even one alien strategist who once fought the Voraxul 1,000 years ago. He had scars on his face and a quiet voice. But when he looked at the map, he whispered, "You are already late." They're waking up. The Voraxul weren't just another alien race. They were something older, deeper. They had once ruled 1,000 systems using fear and mind control. They hadn't died out. They had simply gone to sleep, and now they were returning. Ray ordered more stealth missions to try and learn the enemy's numbers. One team disappeared without a trace. Another one returned, but one of the soldiers screamed non-stop for days and had to be placed in cryosleep before losing his mind completely. He said one thing: they spoke without mouths. And they said Earth will be next. Time was running out. The fleet was growing fast. But not fast enough. The enemy wasn't sitting still. They were preparing to, in the shadows. And then something unexpected happened. A small shuttle arrived at lunar base carrying a half-dead pilot. Her name was Captain Lyra, and she was supposed to be dead. She was part of Vega's command group. No one had survived. Or so they thought. Lyra was burned, weak, and barely breathing. But she carried something in her hand, a metal cube, glowing with faint red lines. Reg rushed to see her as medics tried to keep her alive. She opened her eyes and whispered, "I saw it. I saw their god, and they're not coming for war. They're coming to finish what they started." Then she passed out. Ari held the cube tightly and looked around the room. The war was no longer a future event, had already begun. The Voraxul were waking up, and humanity had little time left. But Reg wasn't afraid anymore, because Earth was no longer building just warships. It was building wrath, and soon that wrath would sail across the stars to find the shadows and burn them out. The enemy thought humans would hide. They thought humans would cry in fear and stay silent after Vega fell. But they were wrong. Humans fought back, even before the full fleet of 700,000 ships was ready. Commander Ray ordered a strike mission. They had found an outpost believed to belong to the Voraxul hidden near a dead moon in Sector 11. It was small, isolated, but active. Reg saw it as the perfect place to send a message. The mission was called Operation First Blood 10. Warships, newly built, fully loaded with advanced tech. Each one piloted by veterans, psychic shielded officers, and soldiers trained for nightmare combat. Leading the mission was Commander Juno, a tough woman who had fought in the last war against the Zarkali. She had lost her brother at Vega, and she wasn't interested in coming back without a fight. As the ships neared the outpost, everything looked normal, silent, and still. But sensors showed strange energy pulses from below the surface of the moon. It was alive. The warships moved into position. Slowly, silently, their weapons locked. And ready, then something shifted. Out of nowhere, black shapes flew into the sky. Voraxul vessels like nightmares with wings. They shimmered and twisted in impossible shapes. They didn't move like machines. They moved like living shadows. The battle began instantly. Blasts of blue fire lit up the stars. Human ships fired everything they had, missiles, lasers, and gravity torpedoes. But the enemy's defense was strange. Some weapons passed right through them like they were made of smoke. Others bounced back, damaging human ships. Juno didn't panic. She gave the order to use the psychic disruptors the moment the weapons fired. Something strange happened. The enemy ships screamed not from engines, but from inside the minds of the crew. Even Juno had to grip her head as the sound tore through her thoughts. But it worked too. Of the enemy ships shattered like glass. Fading into nothing, down on the moon, a squad of elite human soldiers landed. They entered the outpost tunnels. Weapons raised. Inside, the walls were pulsing, almost breathing. Strange symbols glowed, and the air felt heavy. One soldier said it felt like walking through someone's dream more their nightmare. In the deepest chamber, they found something shocking. A creature part metal, part flesh, suspended in a tank. Its body was thin and long, with multiple eyes that blinked in every direction. This was no soldier. It was something higher. A Voraxul Queenbinder, a leader of the hive mind. She turned her head and looked at the team without moving. And then she spoke without words, directly into their minds. You came for revenge. But you are too late. The stars already belong to us. The team captured her, but barely. 2 soldiers were driven insane during the mental struggle and had to be restrained. The Queenbinder was sealed in a chamber and brought back to Earth. On the way back, Juno contacted Re. We hit them hard, but they're stronger than we thought. She said, they're not just enemies. They're something ancient. Red nodded. That's why we can't stop now. The captured alien was placed inside a deep lab, guarded by psychic barriers and anti-telepathy tech. Scientists tried to question her, but she didn't speak. Again, not until Red visited her personally, he entered the dark chamber alone. Facing the floating alien inside the glass tank, she watched him closely. You should have stayed hidden in your cradle, she said at last. Her voice echoed inside his skull like a cold wind. When we rise, you will beg to forget the stars, Reg. Didn't flinch. He stared back and whispered, then we'll burn the sky before we beg. Outside the lab, alarms suddenly flashed. A signal had been sent from the captured queen's body. It wasn't a message of surrender. It was a warning to her kind. A pulse across the stars that reached deep into the Voraquas systems all across space, hidden hives and sleeper. Ships awakened, strange planets shook, and stars turned cold as the enemy began to rise in numbers. The war had truly begun now, but Earth didn't step back. Instead, they sent out their own signal, a message broadcast on every frequency, in every language. Humanity does not forgive. People across the colonies watched the message with silent pride. Old soldiers stood straight. Young recruits trained harder. Mothers who had lost children at Vega wiped tears and whispered, make them pay. Reg ordered the final stages of the Warfleet construction to be rushed. He didn't care about cost anymore. Victory was all that mattered. For the first time in human history, a captured alien leader had confirmed the threat. And humans had survived their first battle against the Voraxul. They knew pain. They knew loss, but now they also knew they could fight back. The galaxy would soon learn what happens when you destroy a human colony. You don't just create war, you create fury, and fury burns brighter than any star. Ray stood at the balcony of High Command. Below him, the shipyards glowed like fire. Above him, the stars waited. He whispered to the darkness, you wanted to see us break, but now, you'll see us rise. The war machines were ready. From Earth to Titan, from Mars to Europa, the sky was filled with giant warships. Each one built for a single purpose, to make the Voraxul suffer. Humanity had never built so many ships before. 700,000. All armed, all fueled, all waiting. Commander Rez stood on the bridge of the Unity Ascendant, the main flagship. Its command deck was like a cathedral made of steel. Screens flashed with star maps. Officers gave reports, and behind every voice there was one emotion: determination. The time had come. The Armada was ready to launch. Across the colonies, people gathered to watch the moment. They held their breath as countdowns began. Children sat on rooftops. Elders saluted. A wave of silence swept across the planets. Then came the signal. One by one, the ships lifted off. Engines roared like thunder. Blue fire lighting up the skies. The fleet rose like a great wave. It looked like an ocean of stars moving toward the black void. Hope and rage burned in every ship's core. But the enemy had not been idle. As the fleet moved, strange things started happening. Some ships reported hearing whispers in their radios, not in human language, just hissing, clicking sounds that made no sense. Others claimed to see shadows moving across their windows, even though nothing was outside. One pilot said he saw his dead brother waving to him on the hull. He passed all mental checks before. Now he was screaming in his sleep. The Vorksul were not attacking with weapons. They were attacking minds. Dreams turned to nightmares. AI systems glitched without reason, and even Rez's personal console began showing strange messages, symbols no one could read. Psychic attacks were spreading across the fleet. Reg called for immediate lockdown. He ordered every ship to activate neuroshields devices that blocked mental waves. He also assigned watchers to monitor every captain and officer, anyone showing strange behavior would be removed, no questions asked. He knew the Vorksul were trying to weaken them before the real war even began. Then something unexpected happened. On the fourth day of the journey, a long-range radar picked up movement. Behind the fleet, a small ship was following them at high speed. No one could identify it. Security was raised, weapons ready. The unknown ship docked with the Unity Ascendant, and guards surrounded it immediately. When the door opened, everyone gasped. A woman stepped out, tired, burned, and bruised. It was Captain Lyra, the only known survivor of Vega Colony. Everyone had thought she was dead. Rez rushed forward. "How are you here?" "We thought," she raised her hand, barely standing. "I escaped. I've been tracking them ever since," she said weakly. "I have information you need to hear. Now." She was taken to the med bay, but before treatment, she showed them a device. A memory cube inside was a recording from the day Vega fell. It showed something no one had seen before. A massive Vorksul ship, far bigger than any human ship. At its core was something even more terrifying: a living brain, pulsing, glowing with red light. It wasn't a ship. It was a godlike creature, a jewel mind. "The heart of the enemy hive," Lyra whispered. "This is what's leading them, and it's heading for Earth." Everyone in the command room froze. Reg looked at the image, his hands clenched into fists. If this jewel mind reached Earth, it wouldn't just destroy cities, it would break people's minds, turn humans into puppets, turn Earth into another hive. There was no time to waste. Reg gave the order to split the fleet. One part would continue forward to strike the enemy's core systems. The other part would return to defend Earth. He would lead the charge. But Lyra had one more warning. "They're not fighting for land or power," she said. "They believe humans are a disease. A mistake that must be erased." She looked into Rez's eyes. "They don't want to rule us. They want to end us." The message shook everyone to their core. This wasn't just war. It was survival. The Unity Ascendant began moving again, leading the first wave of ships. As they entered a dark region of space known as the Maw, things got even stranger. Time began to feel wrong. Some clocks moved too fast, others too slow. Ships reported losing 10 seconds, or gaining them. One scout vanished and reappeared 5 hours later with the entire crew aged by years. The Vorksul were using twisted space, bending the laws of physics. It was more than just a fight with ships and guns. It was a war. Of minds, of realities. But humans didn't stop. They adapted. They changed flight paths, used quantum markers, and began mapping the chaos. Even the AI systems learned to detect the strange pulses and avoid them. One moment stood out. A small, human ship, just a scout vessel, was surrounded by 6 Voraxul fighters. They were doomed, outnumbered, and outgunned. But instead of running, the pilot laughed. He activated his ship's core and flew straight into the largest enemy ship. Both exploded, taking the others. With them, his name was Lieutenant Carr. He became a symbol of kind of bravery only humans had. Reg heard the report and simply said, "That's what makes us different. We're not just fighting to win, we're fighting because we remember." The fleet continued moving. The final battle was still far, but every moment in space brought them closer. Closer to the Jewel Mind, closer to revenge, the Armada had left Earth not just with weapons, but with memories, pain, rage, and hope. And that mixture was more dangerous than anything the enemy had. The Voraxul had destroyed Vega. Now they would see what happens when a species fights, not just to live, but to make sure no one ever forgets what they did. The human fleet reached the edge of the enemy's territory. Before them floated a planet hidden in a collapsing nebula. It was dark, smoky, and cracked with red lightning. The name of this place was Zarnes Prime. According to Lyra's intel, this was one of the main strongholds of the Voraxul. Commander Rez stood on the bridge of the Unity Ascendant, watching the cursed planet. He knew this was not going to be an easy battle, but they couldn't turn back now. Zarnes Prime had to fall, or Earth might be next. The fleet moved into position, thousands of ships forming a wall of firepower. Behind them were supply vessels, medical ships, and transport units carrying ground soldiers. The Voraxul didn't wait this time. From the swirling clouds came waves of enemy ships, black, sharp, and alive. They didn't come in formations like humans did. They swirled like a swarm of insects, fast and chaotic. The first clash lit up the space around Zarnes Prime like a second sun. Lasers, missiles, and shockwaves tore through the void. Human ships fought bravely, using everything they had. But the enemy didn't go down easily. Some Voraxul ships didn't even break apart when hit. They morphed, shifted, and kept fighting. Reg gave the order to release Project Solaris, a weapon built to destroy entire city blocks in a single strike. One ship carried the Solaris cannon. It flew in close and fired directly at the planet. The beam struck the surface, and for a moment, everything went white. When the light faded, a huge section of the planet's surface was turned into glass. But Zarnes Prime wasn't dead. From under the ground came even more horrors-long, spider-like machines. Alien towers rising and firing beams into the sky. The humans had to land. Ground troops were deployed, thousands of soldiers. Drop pods crashing down into the battlefield. Captain Lyra led the first wave, still wounded but refusing to sit back. She wore psychic armor and carried a plasma rifle. Her team hit the ground running, dodging strange tentacles and enemy fire. They had one mission: reach the enemy command center and disable their planetary shield. On the ground, the soldiers faced their worst fears. Some were attacked by creatures that appeared like loved ones. Others heard voices calling them into traps. It was as if the planet itself was trying to break their minds. But the humans didn't stop. They fought through black storms, walls of fire, and shifting terrain. They used flamethrowers, tanks, even psychic counterwave weapons. The battlefield looked like something out of a nightmare, but humans were holding their ground in orbit. The space battle got worse. The Unity Ascendant took heavy damage, its shields dropping to 30%. A Voraxul ship crashed into it like a kamikaze missile. Fire broke out on deck, but the crew kept fighting. Reg grabbed the controls himself and helped pilot the ship. Out of the collision path, he was no longer just a commander. He was a survivor. Like the rest, on the surface of Zarni's Prime. Lyra's team finally reached the alien tower. Inside was the core that powered the planet's defenses. But guarding it was something terrifying, a voraxal knight. It was tall, armored in bone, and moved like liquid death. It carried a blade made of energy and hate. The fight was brutal. 2 soldiers were cut down instantly. Lyra fought hard, using both her rifle and psychic blasts. She remembered Vega, remembered the faces she had lost. She screamed and fired a final shot that cracked the knight's armor. Then she ran forward and stabbed it with her energy blade. The knight collapsed, screeching as it turned into dust. The team planted charges on the power core, and with a massive explosion, the planetary shield went down in space. Rez saw the signal and gave the final order. All ships, fire everything you have. Turn this world into ash. The human fleet unleashed its full might. Missiles, particle beams, gravity warheads slammed into Zarni's Prime. The planet shook, cracked, and split apart. Huge sections fell into fire pits. Alien towers crashed. And the swarm above began to scatter. But just as humans thought they had won. Something dark rose from the planet's center. It was huge, bigger than any ship. A creature made of shadow, eyes glowing red, wings spread wide across the stars. It let out a scream that echoed across every ship. Some officers collapsed, blood coming from their ears. Lyra looked up from the battlefield and whispered, "That's not a ship. That's a god." It was a Zulivatar, a fragment of the Zul mind itself. Created from the minds it had consumed, it moved toward the human fleet like a planet of darkness. Reg made a quick choice. He called for the Oblivion Protocol, a last resort weapon hidden within the fleet. The weapon was never meant to be used, too unstable, too powerful, but now there was no other option. A small ship carried the Oblivion device straight into the Zulivatar. The explosion that followed was like a supernova. Light covered everything, and for a moment it felt like the stars had gone blind. When the light faded, the Zulivats was gone. Zarni's Prime was shattered into floating pieces. The humans had won, but it had come at a great cost, thousands. Dead, many ships lost, Rez sat in silence, watching the destruction. His hands shook. But not from fear, from rage. He knew this was just one battle, just one world. The enemy had many more, and the Zul mind was still out there. But now, the galaxy had seen what humanity could do. They could bleed, they could fall. But they would rise again, and when they did, they would burn everything in their way. This was the siege of Zarni's Prime. And it would be remembered as the day humanity showed they were no longer just survivors. They were hunters now, and the shadows had nowhere left to hide. The victory at Zarni's Prime shook the galaxy. Aliens across many star systems heard about how humans had shattered the Voraxul stronghold. Some were amazed, some afraid, but deep in space, far beyond where light could reach, the real enemy was still watching. The Zul mind, the ancient creature that controlled the Voraxul, had not moved yet, but now it was awake. It began calling its hidden forces from across forgotten worlds. It whispered in the minds of its children, and they answered. Meanwhile, the human fleet was pushing deeper into enemy territory. Every day, more battles were fought, more Voraxul hives were burned. But with each victory, the resistance grew stronger. The enemy was learning, adapting, fighting smarter. Some human ships went missing in strange areas of space. Others returned damaged, empty, or with the crew speaking nonsense. One ship returned with all the clocks frozen and a single message scratched into the hull. "You cannot win. You do not understand what we are." Commander Reg didn't let fear slow them down. He moved the main fleet toward the location known only as the Hollow. It was a place no human had ever entered. Not on purpose, it was a part of space where the laws of time and distance didn't work normally, according to Lyra's cube. The hollow was where the Joule mind lived. If they wanted to end the war, they had to go there. But before they could attack, something terrible happened. Earth was attacked while most of the fleet was deep in enemy space. A smaller Voraxul armada slipped past human sensors. They struck fast, like shadows falling from the stars. Cities were hit, communication towers fell, and millions screamed in panic. Earth's defense force was strong, but not strong enough. The main fleet was too far to return in time. Rev was given a choice: split the fleet and send some ships back to Earth to help, or push forward and strike the hollow while they still had the chance. It was the hardest decision of his life. But in the end, he chose both. He split the fleet. Half of it rushed back toward Earth with high-speed drives. The other half, including Reg and Lyra, continued toward the hollow. This mission would be led by Lyra because only she had seen what waited there as her ships entered the hollow. Things got strange. Time began to stretch and twist. Some soldiers aged rapidly. Others moved like they were stuck in slow motion. Voices echoed through the ship's voices of dead friends, family members, old commanders. It was not just a place, it was a living nightmare. Still, they pushed on. Lyra guided them using strange symbols from the memory cube. She led them to a floating structure made of black stone and red light, the heart of the Joule mind. It was protected by layers of strange energy and living creatures made of pain and thought. Fighting broke out. Ships crashed into each other. Psychic waves blasted through hulls. Some soldiers went mad and opened airlocks, thinking they could touch the stars, but others held strong. Lyra gave the command to activate the Nova device, a powerful bomb designed to burn the enemy's mind from the inside. It had to be delivered close to the Joule mind core by hand. And it was a one-way trip. Lyra didn't hesitate. She took a small shuttle and flew straight into the heart of the enemy. Her final message played across every ship: "If I don't make it back, tell Earth we're not afraid anymore. Tell them we made the shadows scream." Then her signal vanished. Back near Earth, the second half of the human fleet arrived just in time. They fought in the skies over New Asia, Luna Base, and the Mars Ring. It was brutal. Buildings fell, oceans boiled, cities went dark. But humans didn't surrender. They fought with everything: ships, drones, old railguns, even hand weapons. At the peak of the battle, just when it looked like Earth might fall, something happened. A wave of psychic energy swept across the stars. Every Voraxul ship paused, twisted, and then collapsed. Screams were heard from their mind sand, then silence. Across space, the entire Voraxul network broke apart. Hive after hive went dark. Ships crashed, creatures died without orders. The war machines stopped moving. Rev received a short message from deep inside the hollow. Just 2 words: "It's done." Lyra had succeeded. She had reached the Joule mind and triggered the Nova device. The core of the enemy's mind had been burned out. The monster behind the war was gone, but Lyra didn't return. Her name was carved into every human monument. Afterward, she became a legend, the girl from Vega who returned from death to end the war. The turning point of the war wasn't a massive battle. It wasn't the biggest gun. It was a choice: a human pilot flying into hell with fire in her heart. After that day, the Voraxul were no longer a threat. What remained of them fled into the cold dark, afraid of the one thing they had never understood: human will. Reg stood on Earth's surface, watching as families rebuilt their homes. Ships were returning. Heroes were being honored. But he knew the war had changed them forever. Humans were no longer just a species learning to survive. They were now a force, a power that could shake galaxies. The turning point had come, and it was written in flame, loss, and unbreakable courage. Now the stars belonged not to shadows, but to those brave enough to walk through them without fear. Earth was quiet now, not the kind of silence that comes from fear, but the deep silence that follows a long, hard fight. The war with the Voraxul was over. After years of battles, after the fall of Vega Colony, after the loss of millions, it had finally ended. Commander Rez stood alone on the balcony of Unity Tower. He looked up at the stars, the same stars that once held nightmares. Now they felt different because humanity had survived. And more than that, humanity had won. Reports were still coming in from across the galaxy. Voraxul ships were shutting down, whole hives had collapsed. Some creatures were even found wandering without direction. Without the Joule mind to control them, they were like broken machines. The Nova device had worked. Captain Lyra had flown straight into the core of the enemy's power and destroyed the very heart of their hive mind. The cost was great. She never returned, but her sacrifice had changed everything. Her name was now written across banners, buildings, and statues. She had become the symbol of Earth's fury, the girl who had been left for dead at Vega and returned to save the galaxy. Red watched people rebuilding cities. Children were playing in the streets again. Soldiers were returning to their homes. Many were scarred, some physically, some in their minds, but they were alive. Earth had been attacked during the war. Many cities were damaged, millions lost, but it had not fallen because humanity stood together across the colonies. People started to sing again. Old songs, new songs, and songs written during the war. Not about sadness, but about strength, because even when the darkness came, humans had not bowed. In orbit, the fleet was returning. What was left of the 700,000 warships flew back toward Earth like birds finding their nest. Some were damaged, some darkened, but each one carried survivors, stories, and memories. At the spaceport, families waited with tears in their eyes. Some cheered, others cried when they saw empty seats. But they all understood this victory had not come easily. Ray visited the war memorial being built on Mars. At its center was a simple statue of Captain Lyra. She was shown standing straight, with a torch in one hand and a cracked helmet in the other. Around her were the names of every man and woman who gave their life in the war. A young girl was placing a flower at the base of the statue. She looked up at Red and said, "My brother died in the fleet. He said humans never give up." Red nodded, trying not to show emotion. "He was right," he said softly. "We never will." A few days later, the United Terran Command held a special meeting. Leaders from every human colony gathered. Even a few alien allies who had supported Earth during the war were there. There was one goal: to decide what came next. Humanity had become a power that even the galaxy now respected. But Red warned them, power means nothing if we forget why we fought. He suggested the creation of the Stellar Peace Fleet, a force not for war, but for protecting others. To watch for new threats, to help weaker worlds that might face the same danger one day, the Council agreed. From the ashes of war, a new era would rise. But not everyone had peace in their hearts. Some officers wanted to hunt down the last of the Voraxul and wipe them out. Red disagreed. "The war is over," he said. "They're broken. Let them fear us. Let them know if they ever return, we will be ready." He understood something important. Revenge must have an end, or it will destroy the victor too. As weeks passed, humanity began to heal. New cities rose, farms grew again, and people started dreaming of the future. Ships were built not just for battle now, but for exploration, trade, and peace. One day, as Red walked through a school on Luna Base, a child asked him, "Why did we fight the Voraxul?" He paused, then replied, "Because they thought fear could win. But we showed them what hope and unity can do." In the skies above, a new ship launched. Its name was Lyra's Light. Not a warship, but a vessel of peace. Its mission, to explore the galaxy and share what humanity had learned. The stars were open again, no longer ruled by fear, but by the bravery of those who dared to defy it. And in the heart of every human was the same fire, the fire that burned when Vega fell, the fire that rose with every warship, and the fire that said, "You can hurt us, but you will never break us." Humanity had been tested, and they had answered with fury. Now, they would live with pride, knowing they had faced the darkest enemy, and won, not just with weapons, but with courage, with sacrifice, and with the unbreakable will to stand tall even when the stars burned red.